Welcome to Magnet Minutes. I'm Jordan Kimmel with an update for August 11th, 2022. And it's a special honor to bring on a new friend. It's Kim Ann Curtin. She's the founder, CEO of the Wall Street Coach. And I just recently came across and found the book, Transforming Wall Street. And just Kim, thanks so much for joining us.
It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for having me, Jordan.
Well, Kim, let me just share, your name came up during a conversation just a week or so ago, and they said, you don't know Kim? You have to read her book. You have to see what she's done. And it's a conversation, I'm a Wall Street guy, but there's a lot of approaches, and people kind of lost their mind, if you will, on what profits and what things are all about. The world sped up. And so your book, Transforming Wall Street, you've introduced or interviewed 50 of the top names. Some I know, some I don't know. So again, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thank you for reading my book. I mean, not everybody dives in when they hear that I have a book, so I'm grateful that you did.
Well, I did. I'm going to read it fully. But before we get into the book, which I know is full of great stories and interviews, your main business is, really the Wall Street Coach,
Yes.
and what's interesting to me is a lot of professionals are resistant to coaching. I believe that I came across the whole industry of coaching just a few years ago, and I was reminded, hey, Roger Federer has a swing coach, so does Tiger Woods. And the interesting thing is, no matter how professional you are, a professional coach coming in from an unbiased, unemotional view sees things you often don't. So why don't you talk about your main business first, the Wall Street Coach, and what you do, who you help?
Yeah. I think part of the reason coaching isn't something, at least for the older generations, like let's say 50 and above, there's still some resistance to it. Me too. And I think part of that is because in the beginning, when coaches were probably introduced into the corporate world, it was positioned as sort of, hey, you have a problem, we want you to fix it. Here's the coach you have to work with. And so it probably put people's back up thinking, well, what's wrong with me? I have to work with the coach. But it's changed culturally. I mean, coaching has been around for a long time, but especially I've been a coach now 15 years. The Wall Street Coach, I founded it right after the '08 crisis, actually, and started before that with a different name. But that concept now, I think, is shifted. Companies, organizations, individuals have begun to see, oh, this is actually a reward, because the stats on people who hire or coach, the changes in their work, the changes in their personal life are through the roof. And so now I'd say in the last 5 years, it's begun to be seen as a perk. It also doesn't hurt that the show Billions has positioned a performance coach in that dynamic. You've got a fictional character, Bobby Axelrod, but he represents kind of like this baller, strong, no holds back, like he's going to be a bull in a china shop and get what he has to get. And yet they let us see the vulnerability that he has with his coach. So I think that has helped as well to kind of shift it. Even somebody who's really a powerful, strong, confident man might still have some, unconscious actions or behaviors that hold him back. And so perhaps that, has helped as well to make people think, oh, this might help. But it started because I hired a coach. I hired a coach before I worked at one of the largest hedge funds in the world, obviously very well compensated. I loved what I did, but there was a part of me that felt it wasn't my bliss. This is not that thing that I know exists. I'm a huge Joe Campbell fan, the mythologist. who talks about
Sure.
finding your bliss. So I was like, where is that bliss? Like, yes, I'm well compensated. Yes, I do stuff that I'm good at, but it just felt like I wanted the bliss. So I wound up hiring a coach, and that relationship and experience was so profound that in short order, I felt called to become a coach. And when I started my coaching practice, I didn't initially think I was going to focus on finance professionals or traders or investors. I just wanted to coach, didn't matter who. But the '08 crisis is what, I started in 2006, the coaching. A year and a half later, 2008 comes along, and I, was worried about my business because I had just left a beautiful salary and now I'm an entrepreneur. And I was like,
Right.
yikes, this is not good that the crisis is happening because, people stop spending money on everything, including coaching. So I decided to go down to Wall Street and gift my coaching to those, because I, knew the traders were getting fired off the trading floor. It was just pandemonium. People were, freaking out about the fall of Wall Street, which is what the media
Sure.
at the time. And so I just, decided, well, until I get some business and I'll do what I know I'm born to do, and that's coach people. So I sat on a bench with a little sign that said the coach is in. And
Wow.
for a year, I coached on that bench. And during that journey, a couple of reporters came, and one of them called me the Wall Street coach. And I thought, hey, that's a pretty good name.
Cool name. Cool name. But it's a great story, and I think that, when you say about, Bobby with billions, it's a great example. But not only was he using the coach, but he had the whole organization using the coach. And I do love to read, and a lot of people, you read their story, they're very open about having a coach and
Yes.
and using coaches in their organization. And oftentimes they see things that you don't see. And Kim, let me share, more than 10 years ago, I forgot where I met him, but I came across a professional coach, and he was coming to my office every other week. And it was really an interesting, time, and left me with, maybe after 3-4 months, his book of, what to review and what to think about, and, maybe particularly what I should be thinking about. But it's a fabulous industry. And I think that the importance of it is only going to grow. And again, sharing what I shared before, when I was initially resistant, the comment to me was, you do know that Tiger Woods has a swing coach. He's the best in the world,
Right.
the best in the world. And every professional team, and I love, sports and sports analogies, every team
That's right.
has many, many coaches, and these are the elite players in their situation. So I'm going to finish reading your book, and then we'll, I'd love to, kind of chat some more. But I want to dive into the book for a minute, because I found it really interesting. And so you kind of transformed your business around the financial crisis. I actually saw something occurring, which was a breakdown in trust. And the bear market that came out in 07, 08, 09 wasn't the valuation bear market we had in the dot-com cycle. It was more a matter of people locked up. There was a breakdown in trust. We actually created a new model to invest back then. But I think a lot of your book addresses the conscious capital movement, the discussion that perhaps the myth of shareholder value is not understood correctly enough. So let's jump into that chapter first. It's Ayn Rand, and you talk about the myth of shareholder capital. And people will say, no, that's what they said.
Shareholder value. And that is because of Milton Friedman not being an attorney. He was an economist. And because of that, he misread the mandate that companies had to be run for the shareholders, which is legally actually not true. Citizens United actually, it was addressing that. But this all got taught to me because of Professor Lynn Stout, who I'm sorry to say passed away a couple of years ago. But her book, in the research I was doing for my book, when I read her book, I was like, oh my God, business is still being run this way for the shareholders. Businesses think that they have to be beholden to their shareholders above all else, but that is not what the requirement legally actually is. And that misunderstanding is part of why we find ourselves in this place where small businesses and businesses, they used to last on average, the lifespan was 76, 82 years. Now it's 8 years. So business is going extinct. And this only began 30 years ago when Friedman came out with this, and his, there were a couple other guys besides him, but they made a mistake. And so Lynn Stout's book, which is called The Shareholder Value Myth, is 73 pages of just shocking, incredible information that I feel, and we still have business schools teaching this shareholder value, that this is the most important thing, and it's ruining our economy, it's ruining business, and it's ruining entrepreneurship because it's not the way it was run. And when you look, most people think that's been around forever. It just began back in the 70s. This was not the way business was run before. And even the crazy insane salaries at the C-suite level, that was not how we ran businesses before. So something's off balance. I think '08, if anything, part of the reason I felt inspired or encouraged to write this book was because I saw after the '08 situation kind of unfolded. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, the Occupy Wall Street movement began.
Of course.
And that protest, because I had sat on a bench for a year outside the stock exchange, I knew the neighborhood.
It was a wild scene down there.
It was a wild scene, right? And that started about 8 months, I think, after I started, coaching for free, doing speed coaching on that bench. So I went to check it out, Occupy, and I started to talk to these young people. And they were basically touting communism as the solution. And I was like, I don't think you guys understand history. like we have a situation, I said, but it isn't capitalism that got us into this situation. It's corrupt capitalism. It's crony capitalism. It's business selling shit to their clients. I hope it's okay to curse.
It's okay. It's okay.
That is the issue. It's not, if this was true capitalism, what Adam Smith, the father of capitalism, advocated, that is about exchanging value for value. And so I was upset by hearing what these young people thought. They thought capitalism was corrupt. And I was like, no, capitalism isn't corrupt. The people who are listening to this bullshit about, shareholder returns, that's what they're focused on, not true capitalism. So I just thought, I knew there were good men and women in Wall Street. I knew there were men and women who had succeeded in finance with integrity. So why don't we go to them, I thought, for the thoughts and advice on how to, we have to revise Wall Street. We might have to transform it, but who better to talk to than those who have been able to stay true to their integrity under duress? That I thought we needed to hear from them. So that's how the whole thing started. But I think it's still out there. Capitalism gets a bad name, but it's not capitalism's fault. It's those who pretend to be conscious capitalists or capitalists, and they're not. They're just looking for the dollar.
Right. They talked about the short-termism. And so we're going to get right now into these Wall Street 50 that you did interview. And I love the passion that you have when you were just sharing your thoughts. And I'll just, before we get into the 50, I'll just share that perhaps if you think about doing what's best for the shareholders, if you think about 5, 10, 15 years from now, if that's the shareholder value you're looking to create, then the short-termism, the bonuses based on crapped up earnings won't exist. And if you vested your options over 5 and 10 years, then we believe actually CEOs will make a lot of good decisions based on shareholder value that would really suit all their stakeholders. But so getting back to transforming Wall Street, first of all, I love the name of the book, but I love the way you approached it. And there's some pretty heavy names in those 50, and I know some pretty heavy stories. So I have some specific questions, but I'll let you jump off on any either story or individual that you thought really, is making a difference and can make a difference.
I mean, God, there's so many, it's like asking someone their favorite child, like they're all people that
when
matter.
There's 50 of them, right?
There's 50 of them. I mean, I think I want to just give a shout out right out of the gate to Brad Katsuyama, who started IEX Group, and he's still, killing it. They basically disrupted the not so clean attitude of a couple of organizations, and he wanted to create a way to make sure that investors and traders would have information that was not delayed. And that's what Michael Lewis's book called Flash Boys is about, his journey about creating IEX Group. And even to this day, they just won another I think they had a hearing with the SEC that they again got acknowledged that their approach is what needs to happen. His courage of standing up, I mean, it's one of the most watched interviews of NBC's history, CNBC's history, when the former CEO of BATS basically was literally poking Brad Katsuyama in the chest, and the trading floor, which never stops, stopped to watch this very brave man call out the shenanigans he knew was happening. And that CEO was losing his shit on air because he couldn't believe this guy had the courage to call it out. And that, to me, it's like, I'll never forget. I was actually writing the book. I won't say who, but I already had 50, but I was writing the book. I got Flash Boys. I read it in one sitting.
Great book, great book.
This guy, Brad, has to be in my book. There's no way he can't be. And then I stumbled into that CNBC interview with him standing there and taking this guy, like literally physically hitting him. And I was like, who is this man? He is unbelievable. And so luckily I called and I was like, look, I'm in Hawaii. I'm writing a book right now, but he has to be in here. Please, can I interview him? And very fortunate for me, they said yes. So Brad is just, he just continues to be this bright lighthouse that proves over and over again that there are good people on Wall Street that are doing right by the investors and the traders. But, you have to be discriminatory in how and who you trust. I don't pretend there isn't issues or corruption on Wall Street. I'm just saying, let's find the ones who aren't so they can be the lighthouses to the rest of us.
Exactly. And I think that's a perfect way to put it. We do something called Trust Across America and look for the most trustworthy companies. And the funniest thing is the highest score is an 80 out of 100. And so, meaning there is no perfect company, there is no perfect person, but if you find the ones on the right tip of the bell curve, we could follow their example. So we don't want to ever pretend anybody is perfect.
Nobody's perfect. And
some people get it a lot more right than others.
Yes. And look, hopefully people are in their business experience over many years, they're going to learn and grow and evolve. But I wasn't looking for perfect people. I was looking for people who I felt had stood up to, the proverbial gun against the head when a lot of money was at stake. Were they able to stay true to their integrity? Were they able to retain a level of consciousness of their choices? And the entire book and all of their amazing stories are wrapped now in my book around what I call my 5 practices. And my 5 practices, those are practices that I strive to practice every day. And they are what informs my coaching. And those 5 practices are self-responsibility, self and other empathy, emotional non-resistance, being able to learn how to serve emotionally, hard to be with feelings, embracing your hero's journey, and self-awareness. Those 5 practices, because they inform so much of my journey and my life and my work, when I interviewed everybody, after I interviewed them all, I interviewed over 90 people initially and then, culled it back. But when I was putting all their stories together, what I began to notice was that each of those 50 practiced one or more of those 5 practices.
Right.
And
it would
so
make sense they do.
Right? So I was able to take the practice of self-responsibility and allow their stories to speak to how they took so much responsibility for their journey, which to me showed that practice in real time. And Oswald Grubel, one of the gentlemen I had the very good fortune to meet, former UBS CEO of US, he was CEO of UBS AG, that was his formal title. There was a rogue trader, I believe it was a London office that had, committed fraud, stole money. And Mr. Grubel said, I am gonna, somebody has to take ownership for this guy. He's in Switzerland and he's
right.
I have to step down because it happened under my watch. What? Who does that in today's world? The buck stops here. That's like Eisenhower kind of level of integrity.
Right.
And that is what he did. And that to me, again, and the board tried to talk him out of it. They were like, no, we don't want you to leave because you're this amazing CEO. But he was like, we will not retain trust with our clients if I don't take ownership for that. And that to me was just such a shining example of that tells me that's a man who sees beyond just his own well-being. He's looking at the organization's trust, the well-being of all his clients who he felt a responsibility to.
Right. And so often, Kim, what you find is they look for the rogue employee when it's been a systematic, and we don't want to name names, Wells Fargo, but they look for an individual rogue levels down, and to get up and say, hey, it's me, it's my watch, is big. And so you mentioned, Brad, leveling the field for investors as a great example. I know one of the chapters I really liked that I started, I wanted to get through all of them, was this concept of, if you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Yes.
And I think that's a great question to ask, because sometimes the world is difficult to change. You have to operate sometimes within, but this question, if you had a magic wand, and I want you to do a couple things. Share a magic wand story. And then I also want you, Kim, to share, if you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Look, my book sits next to my desk. I have it all the time, but I'm trying to quickly remember that chapter. You got me.
Well, Josh Brown, a friend, mentioned abolishing retail, and that. So there's all kinds of examples. So I won't put you on the spot for anyone else, but I'll ask you.
They had great ideas.
I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
If you had the magic wand,
yes,
not only transforming Wall Street, but maybe transforming the way people treat each other, whether it's on a trading floor, on a subway, or on a touring boat in Hawaii.
Well, it starts with the subtitle to my book is my answer to that question. My magic wand, it would be increasing consciousness, right? Because if people are asleep or unconscious and not really present to who they are, what's driving them, then you potentially are at risk of costly mistakes, personally and professionally. So my magic wand would just awaken people to be more self-aware. And part of the reason I suspect people avoid self-awareness or self-reflection is because they're afraid to look at themselves and their humanity and their fallibility without, what's the word? Shaming themselves. It's like people don't know how to be with their humanity, their fallibility. They think they have to be perfect. They're trying to live into some kind of, make believe perfection that, first of all, nobody ever secures. And second of all, isn't what it's all about. It's like, how do you get comfortable being who you are with all of your humanity, not just the good stuff, but the stuff that's the shadow. Like, we all have these issues where, again, you said I could curse. We're all fucked up, right? But the question is, if we don't look that dragon in the eye and ask ourselves, where are those places that there are dragons I don't want to face, then it's going to be a much less enjoyable ride. So, that's part of why I wrote this book too. I felt like even the people who are perhaps, trying to live in integrity in finance, trying to come from a great place, they're probably going to fall down a lot. They're going to see times where they didn't show up at their best. But do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? Or do you say to yourself, wow, I really wish I showed up differently. How do I not make myself wrong for that? And begin to ask myself, I wonder what was going on for me? What was happening for me? Get curious. That the most important things I say to clients when they come into coaching is there's two requirements. You've got to bring curiosity and neutrality. You can't change if you have judgment. But the reason we judge each other is because we judge ourselves.
Right. It's fantastic. So that's a lot of experience talking, Kim. And, one of the reasons we were asked to reach out to you is we're trying to distill wisdom and look for people's best ideas and best thoughts. And one of the things I heard that you say there, and it just goes back to the original golden rule. If we, all the time in every transaction with everybody we walk in their shoes and we ask the question, how would we want to be treated, and treat others that exact way. It's as simple sometimes as the golden rule we found in trust. It's as simple as, hey, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat. And there's really no substitute. You can't do any one of those things and be trustworthy. And so,
but it's the self-trust. I feel that's the biggest challenge across all industries, but especially in finance. I don't think people trust themselves. And it's hard when you don't ultimately trust yourself and or see your own value and or worthiness. It's really going to be costly to try to see somebody else's, because you think that they are somehow going to, that it's like a zero-sum game, but it isn't. So I just feel like most people, they're too hard on themselves, especially those in finance, those that are the, A-type people, like they are incredibly hard on themselves. So their ability to trust themselves, because they think they say, oh, well, I'll trust myself when I'm perfect. I'm like, well, good luck, because nobody's getting alive. So how do you trust yourself while you're fallible, while you're human? And that facilitates your ability to have understanding for other people. But if you don't have it for yourself first, it's hard to give what you don't have.
Right. And you know what, Kim, we all know that in life, you learn more from your own mistakes than you do from successes. Maybe one of the tricky things is trying to learn from other people's mistakes and not make them yourself. But I think that what I would encourage everyone to do is pick up a copy of Transforming Wall Street, read what these 50 people do. If you're looking for a coach, and I know that you have a team, you're out in Hawaii, but why don't you do this before we wrap up? If there's a website that people can find you,
Yep.
where are they going to find you, Kim?
TheWallStreetCoach.com. That's our website.
All right.
And I
And
have
if
a
you can't
podcast
spell
as
it,
well.
if you can't spell that, you
You're
shouldn't
in
be
trouble.
coached anyway. So thewallstreetcoach.com.
Yeah.
And let me just thank you again for the time, for your very valuable time that you shared with us, the book. And you know, we're looking for some of your wisdom in something that we're doing, you know, next.
Yeah.
So thanks for the time. And let me say aloha from
Aloha.
New Jersey to Hawaii. And thanks so much for the time again.
Thank you. Thank you.
All righty. So this is Jordan Kimmel wrapping up a Magnet Minutes. Have a great day for the informed investor. Kim really shared some wisdom. Thanks again, Kim. And thanks to all for the time.